What's going on, my Loreverse family? The season 3 premiere of House of Dragon delivered everything we've been waiting for. Dragons taking the skies, brutal political betrayals, and the opening of an all-out civil war. But amidst all the political maneuvering, the episode delivered one of the most jarring, uncomfortable, and deeply psychological moments in the entire history of Westeros. And somehow, it wasn't a dragon battle. It wasn't a historic battlefield death. It wasn't even a standard political betrayal. It was Aemond Targaryen kissing his own mother, Alicent Hightower. The moment itself lasted only a few agonizing seconds, but those few seconds completely shattered how the fandom views both of these characters at this point, shifting the entire paradigm of the Green faction's dynamic. In social media, when they first saw this, they exploded immediately. Viewers were very confused. Some thought it came completely out of nowhere, written into the script purely for shock value to rival the standard premium cable reputation. But if you truly dug into the text of this episode, examine the subtle nuances of the performance, study the underlying character psychology, and look closely at what actor Ewan Mitchell has explicitly shared about Aemond's internal motivations, you realize this scene is actually one of the most disturbing, calculated, and revealing moments House of the Dragon has ever produced. Because the kiss isn't about romance, it isn't about even physical attraction. It isn't even really about Alicent as an individual. It's about a deeply broken, emotionally starved second son desperately trying to understand what unconditional love actually looks like. And on the flip side, it's about a desperate mother who is willing to weaponize and manipulate that exact emotional damage for the sake of political survival. So this is the Loreverse. This is your boy Stevie Hayes, and today we are going to break down why did Aemond kiss Alicent. Let's dive into this. Now, to truly understand the gravity of this scene, we have to look backward and examine the psychological blueprint of Aemond Targaryen. Because Aemond has never lived a normal life. From early childhood, he was isolated, cast aside, and systematically bullied. Unlike Aegon, he was never the firstborn favorite son burdened with the expectation of the crown. Unlike Helena, he wasn't protected by a natural innocence or treated with gentle distance. And unlike Daeron, he wasn't sent away to Old Town to grow up in relative peace. Aemond existed in a toxic, neglected middle ground within the Red Keep. He was a boy constantly searching for validation in a court that mocked him. Think back to the trauma of the pink dread prank arranged by his own brother and nephews. Look at the constant crushing reminder that he was the only prince of the blood who remained dragonless while the world moved past him. Those formative humiliations completely warped his worldview, and then everything changed the night he claimed Vhagar. By claiming the oldest, largest, and most lethal living dragon on Earth, the grand beast of Queen Visenya herself, Aemond didn't just claim a weapon, he claimed an identity. He traded his vulnerability for absolute terror. He learned a deeply dangerous toxic lesson. Power earns respect. Fear earns obedience. Violence earns results. But notice what's missing from that equation: love. Love was something Aemond never learned to comprehend because he rarely, if ever, experienced it purely. Every single relationship in his life has been strictly transactional. His grandfather, Otto Hightower, viewed him as a strategic blade to be pointed at their enemies. His mother relied on him to be the strong, disciplined protector that Aegon could never be. His brother feared his competence, and his enemies outright loathed him. Nobody simply loved Aemond for who he was beneath the leather and the sapphire eye. He grew up starving for genuine affection, and that emotional starvation is the volatile foundation for everything that transpires in this premiere. Now, let's look at the other side of the room. Alicent Hightower. She enters this specific conversation with a hidden massive agenda that carries immense geopolitical consequences. At this point in the Dance of the Dragons, Alicent has reached a profound psychological breaking point. The realm is bleeding. Her family is fractured beyond repair. The horrific events of Blood and Cheese, coupled with the brutal clash at Rook's Rest, have shown her the true cost of the war she helped ignite. She is staring into the abyss of total Targaryen annihilation, and she increasingly realizes a bitter truth. Rhaenyra's forces are closing in, and the Greens are fighting a losing battle of attrition. And more importantly, Alicent is already secretly shifting the board pieces behind the scenes to orchestrate an end to the madness. She is looking for a way out, contemplating surrender, exploring back channels, and trying to preserve whatever remains of her children's lives. But there is one massive, terrifying obstacle standing in the way of any peaceful resolution or surrender, and that's Aemond Targaryen. As long as Aemond remains entrenched in the capital, acting as regent and protector of the realm, Rhaenyra cannot safely take King's Landing. Not while Vhagar sits parked on the hillside. ready to reduce any fleets and armies to ash. Not while the most ruthless and unpredictable dragon rider alive holds the city in an iron grip. Aemond would gladly burn the capital to the ground before he ever bends to the knee to the blacks. Therefore, for Alicent's hidden plans to succeed, Aemond has to leave the capital. She needs him off the board, and she knows the only way to move him is to personally manipulate him into leaving. And if you rewatch the scene with this context in mind, the dialogue becomes incredibly sinister. Alicent isn't speaking to him with the genuine warmth of a mother. She is executing a calculated political play. Every sentence, every inflection of her voice is specifically engineered to steer Aemond towards a single conclusion: leave King's Landing, ride south, go to Harrenhal, confront Daemon, and take Vhagar away from the Iron Throne. And to do this, she utilizes the ultimate psychological weapon against her son: validation. She begins feeding him the exact emotional oxygen he has been suffocating without his entire life. She praises his strength. She validates his intellect. She tells him everything he has desperately needed to hear from a parent since he was a child. She heavily implies that he is the one who truly deserves to rule, and that he is wiser than Aegon, stronger than his peers, and the true savior of House Hightower. And think about the sheer intoxicating power of those words to a man like Aemond. He has spent his entire existence feeling like an overlooked shadow. Now, suddenly, the mother he fiercely protects is looking into his eyes and telling him he is everything. He drinks it in completely. Defenses dropped entirely, totally blind to the fact that he's being steered directly into a trap designed to clear him out of the capital. This is precisely where the scene transitions from a standard political drama into a profound psychological tragedy, because for Alicent, this sudden display of profound intimacy is purely tactical. It is a necessary means to a political end, but for Aemond, this is entirely real. If we look at Ewan Mitchell's brilliant character insights, Aemond possesses a completely distorted, stunted understanding of human intimacy. Because he was raised in an environment of fear and transactional relationships, his brain does not recognize healthy, well-adjusted boundaries. He doesn't know how normal people would display affection. So when Alicent steps into his personal space, treats him with a sudden surge of physical warmth, touches his face, and speaks to him with deep maternal reverence, Aemond's profoundly damaged psyche short circuits. He completely misreads the emotional frequency. He mistakes a mother's desperate manipulative strategy for survival for unconditional love and profound acceptance. It is a devastating look into his soul. And for one fleeting moment, Aemond believes the illusion. He thinks his mother finally sees him, not as a living weapon of mass destruction, not as the rider of Vhagar, but as her boy. And let's be completely clear about the framing of this moment. The narrative is absolutely not presenting this as a moment of genuine mutual romantic attraction. This isn't a typical Targaryen incest romance built on Valyrian exceptionalism or desire. This is a raw, unflinching portrayal of severe emotional dysfunction. And when the dam breaks and Aemond is flooded with unprecedented wave of maternal affection, his broken internal wiring processes the intimacy incorrectly. In the moment of intense emotional confusion and being overwhelmingly vulnerable, he leans forward and initiates a physical kiss. And the reality is, it is deeply inappropriate. It is profoundly disturbing. It makes the audience recoil in discomfort. And that is exactly what the writers and actors intended. We aren't watching a romance. We are witnessing the tragic, explosive manifestation of years of childhood neglect and emotional starvation. Aemond isn't acting out of lust. He is acting out of a deeply twisted, confused dependency. He is trying to lock down and really reciprocate the only piece of true affection he thinks he has ever received in his life. But because his worldview is so fractured, the expression of that desire becomes really distorted. And the true horror of the scene culminates in Alicent's immediate reaction. The moment his lips touch hers, you can see the visceral shock and disgust wash over her face. Her sensibilities and her lifelong dedication to the strict morality of the faith of the seven are screaming inside of her. But watch what she does next. She freezes. She doesn't slap him across the face. She doesn't scream. She doesn't call the King's Guard. Why? Because Alicent is a master politician. And in that split second of horror, she calculates the catastrophic stakes of the room. And if she violently rejects him in this moment, if she shatters the illusion, calls him a monster, and exposes her own manipulation, the entire plan is cooked. Aemond, being vulnerable, will instantly curdle back into defensive, murderous rage. He will realize he was being used as a pawn yet again. He will refuse to leave King's Landing. His suspicion of her will skyrocket, and her entire strategy to surrender the city peacefully to Rhaenyra will completely collapse. So Alicent makes a morally harrowing choice. She allows the moment to linger. She endures the deeply uncomfortable intimacy because she needs something from him. She weaponizes her own son's psychological damage, sacrificing her maternal integrity to ensure he mounts Vhagar and flees away to Harrenhal. It is a moment that reveals just how far Alicent Hightower has fallen into the muddy, ruthless waters of Westerosi politics. So the profound narrative brilliance of this sequence lies in its layers of absolute deception. Neither person standing in that room is being emotionally honest. Both characters are trapped inside a house of mirrors. Alicent is performing an idealized version of maternal devotion that she does not truly feel, performing it solely to manipulate her son's military moments. Aemond is projecting a desperate fantasy of unconditional love onto a mother who is currently actively betraying his political position. It's a tragic, really collision of two profound lies. Alicent clings to the illusion that she can manipulate the most dangerous dragon rider in the world without facing catastrophic personal blowback. Aemond, on the other hand, clings to the illusion that he can finally heal the open wounds of his childhood through a sudden flash of maternal closeness. The kiss is the exact breaking point where those two illusions smash into one another, leaving both characters fundamentally altered. There is another brilliant subtle layer woven into this manipulation as well. Alicent specifically uses Aemond's deep-seated obsession with his uncle Daemon Targaryen to anchor her trap. Right? Why does she point him directly toward Harrenhal? Because she knows Daemon is Aemond's ultimate psychological trigger. For years, Aemond has modeled his entire persona after the Rogue Prince. The dark clothing, the dangerous swagger, the absolute disregard for authority, the pursuit of ancient Valyrian legacy. Aemond built an idolized version of Daemon in his mind and spent his life trying to surpass that. He views Daemon as his ultimate rival, really his dark reflection, and his supreme benchmark for greatness. And by framing the trip to Harrenhal as a grand and necessary quest for that only Aemond is strong enough to handle, Alicent beautifully aligns her political goals with his deepest psychological obsessions. She isn't just pushing him out of the city, she is dangling the ultimate prize in front of him, the chance to slay the Rogue Prince and cement his legacy as the greatest Targaryen warrior alive. She knows exactly which button to press and she executes it to a flawless extent. Now, for 2 seasons, fans have debated what will ultimately bring down Aemond Targaryen. Many believe that his fatal flaw is his blinding arrogance. Others argue it's his volatile hair trigger temper that led to the accidental death of Lucerys Valerian at Storm's End. But this premiere episode does suggest a much deeper, far more tragic reality. Aemond's greatest weakness is his absolute crushing loneliness. Every single action he takes on the chessboard stems directly from this void. His relentless pursuit of martial perfection, his dangerous bond with the ancient Vhagar, his obsession with overcompensating for his lost eye, his absolute hatred for being laughed at or underestimated is all a massive defense shield erected by a lonely child who never felt safe, valued, or loved. And that is the ultimate tragedy of this character. When that lonely child is finally offered a glimpse of the affection he has starved for, his defenses melt instantly. He becomes blind to reality, completely vulnerable, and entirely open to destruction. He can survive dragonfire, blades, and political plots, but he cannot survive the weaponized promise of a mother's love. And on a grander scale, this unsettling interaction speaks directly to the core thematic thesis of George R. R. Martin's universe, the perpetual cycle of generational trauma. House of the Dragon is really at its root a grand tragedy about parents destroying their own children, who in turn go on to destroy the realm. Right? King Viserys failed his family through passive neglect and favoritism, planting the seeds of civil war. Otto Hightower failed Alicent, viewing his own daughter as a political chess piece to be inserted into the king's bedchambers. Alicent failed Aegon by forcing a crown onto his head that he never wanted, and now she is fundamentally failing Aemond through psychological exploitation. The series constantly demonstrates how broken parents inevitably create broken children. And in a world where those broken children ride godlike weapons of mass destruction, their internal psychological fractures translate directly into burning kingdoms, ash, and genocide. And this scene here is a masterclass in showing how a single intimate moment of parental manipulation can set off a chain reaction that will cost thousands of innocent lives across Westeros. Now, looking forward into the rest of season three, the long term narrative consequences of this interaction are going to be absolutely catastrophic. Consider the psychological fallout where the fog of war clears and Aemon inevitably uncovers the truth. Imagine the sheer unadulterated rage of realizing the single most emotionally vulnerable raw moment of your entire life was calculated. It was an engineered lie, right? Imagine discovering that the mother you swore to protect never meant a single word of praise, that she was merely playing a part to get you away from the capital so she could hand the keys of the city over to your sworn enemies. For a well adjusted person, that realization is emotionally devastating. But for a volatile, unstable, dragon riding powerhouse like Aemon Targaryen, it's an apocalyptic event. The moment Aemon realizes his mother's affection was a transactional illusion, whatever remaining fragments of his humanity will completely evaporate. The last lingering tether tying him to empathy, family loyalty, and restraint will snap. And if Alicent thought she was dealing with a dangerous son before, this betrayal is precisely the catalyst that will transform Aemond into an absolute unmitigated monster, setting him on a path of scorched earth destruction that will leave the Riverlands in absolute ruin. So when you look at the big picture, why did Aemond kiss Alicent? He did it because he tragically mistook cold political manipulation for genuine, unconditional love. He did it because a lifetime of profound emotional neglect left him completely incapable of realizing healthy boundaries or reading emotional cues. He did it because Alicent Hightower deliberately walked into his personal space and weaponized his deepest, darkest childhood insecurities to achieve an immediate military objective. This scene isn't fundamentally about incest. It's a horror story about emotional starvation. It's about a mother willingly exploiting her son's deepest psychological wounds and a desperate second son looking for love in the most tragic, broken place possible. The ultimate tragedy of the premiere is that for a brief, fleeting moment, Aemon Targaryen likely believed he was finally seen, valued, and genuinely loved by his mother. And that exact beautiful illusion is the very thing that is going to completely destroy him. But what do you think, guys? Was Aemon's reaction a purely tragic misunderstanding of emotional boundaries? Was Allison justified in going to such extremes morally, right? Because I mean, this is a horrifying length. If she truly believed it was the only way to stop Vagar and save the realm from total annihilation, or was this one of the darkest, most unforgivable personal betrayals we have ever witnessed in Westeros history? And let me know your theories and deep dives and breakdowns in the comments below. And if you want to dig deeper into the lore of the Dance of the Dragons, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel because we are breaking down every important detail that we see in the House of the Dragon episode. So until the next time, fire and blood, stay crispy. Peace out.